Dear Mom, You Are Ruining My Life by Jean Van Leewen. Chapter 2, read by Н.Бизова, Троєщина Gymnasium, Kyiv, Ukraine, 2021. Be ready to answer the questions after listening. What does Mr. Spiegel look like? Why? What do the kids offer ideas about? What happens when Sam bumps into Brian? What is Katie's letter about? It was the science teacher, Mr. Spiegel, though, who was the big surprise. He was very large and very hairy, with a walrus mustache and a shaggy brown beard. Standing in the science lab, surrounded by test tubes and Bunsen burners, he looked like an evil scientist from a horror movie. But then he began to talk. He talked about what science was and how people do scientific experiments in their everyday lives without even knowing it. And while he was talking, he was lining up 4 test tubes in front of him. He said he was performing a scientific experiment right now. He was trying to see if he could turn water into wine. And while everyone watched, the water actually turned pink, and then dark pink, and then red, as he poured it from one test tube to another. No one could believe it. Even Marshall Tucker seemed puzzled. He thought he knew everything and always had his hand waving in the air. Katie called him the human brain. But then Mr. Spiegel stopped pouring. Oh my, I forgot. Your parents probably wouldn't approve of my having wine in the classroom. I'd better change it back to water. And he poured it back from the last test tube to the first. And it got lighter and lighter until finally it was perfectly clear again, like pure water. How did you do that? That wasn't really wine, was it? They were all talking at once, without even raising their hands. Mr. Spiegel looked delighted. How do you think I did it? You are all scientists. See if you can figure it out. Everyone started offering ideas, crazy ones and sensible ones. A lot had to do with dye. Jimmy Humphrey asked, "Is it a magic trick?" Mr. Spiegel laughed. In a way, yes. It's the magic of chemistry. Sam didn't say anything. She was feeling kind of strange. She wasn't used to having a teacher like this. She glanced over at Katie. Katie looked the way Sam felt. She was staring at Mr. Spiegel with her mouth hanging open. Sam was startled when the bell rang. It couldn't be the end of class already. And then, just as she was walking out the door of Mr. Spiegel's room, something else surprising happened. She bumped into Brian Finnegan. Brian Finnegan, of the million freckles and the million jokes. Brian Finnegan, who had once stolen her lunchbox, eaten everything he liked, and thrown the rest up a tree. Brian Finnegan, whom she had known since nursery school. Hey, watch it, Slayton, he said with a grin. Brian Finnegan had the cutest grin. Somehow she'd never noticed it before. Suddenly, Sam stopped breathing. Her face felt hot, as if it were on fire. Her hands felt cold. What was going on here? Was she coming down with a fever? Or could this be what it felt like to like a boy. Mrs. Pinckney was right, Sam thought. 6th grade was going to be very different. Dear Sam, Mr. Spiegel is the greatest teacher. It wasn't water or wine, I bet. Probably some kind of chemicals. I like beards, especially brown, bushy ones. My father's reminds me of a goat's, all black and white. He says we are responsible for the white. His kids get it? Bonnie and Betsy's jeans look like they came from an ash can. I have decided to do scientific research when I grow up. Love, Katie. Now be ready to answer the questions. What does Mr. Spiegel look like? Why? What do the kids offer ideas about? What happens when Sam bumps into Brian? What is Katie's letter about?